Hello, ladies, and welcome back to With Love, Happily Ever Authentic. I'm Katrina, your host, and I'm so excited to have you with me today as we are continuing our February Girlfriends Chat. And of course, I have my very, very special guest, Tiffany Mann, with me. We are about to get started, and we are going to begin by talking about intimacy today in different ways. In different ways, we're going to be talking about intimacy today. So please, if you know someone who is a wife, if you yourself are a wife, and you find the information that we share here to be helpful, authentic, and just something that you can really glean from, I am encouraging you to like and subscribe so that more wives can get this information and that you can continue to receive our girlfriend chats, especially for the remainder of the month. But without further ado, please welcome my guest again, Tiffany Mann. Tiffany, hey.
Hello again.
Welcome back. Welcome back. So
Thanks
glad
for having
to have you
me.
here. How are you today?
I'm doing great.
Great, great, great. I
Ready
want
to
to talk to
chat.
you about, say it again.
I'm ready to chat.
Oh, you ready to chat? Okay, let's go. I want to talk about intimacy, but I first want to start on the trust topic when it comes to intimacy because I feel like when people hear the term intimacy, a lot of times they immediately go to sex,
Physical, yeah,
physical
absolutely.
intimacy, get down in the bedroom, and all the things, which is great. But intimacy obviously begins well before the bedroom. And a portion of that has to do with the trust relationship that you have with your spouse
Absolutely.
or whomever you're in
Right.
a place of intimacy with at
Right.
that moment. So, talk to us a little bit about trust, Tiffany. Tell us first, what is trust? What does it mean to trust somebody?
Ooh. Well, I don't have the Webster's dictionary, but if I were thinking about trust in general, I would think about a person's ability to feel comfortable and confident
Okay.
with how they communicate and how they experience being with this other person. And so, like you mentioned, trust exists in multiple relationships. I know we focus here on that spouse relationship and with your husbands,
Yeah.
but I believe a lot of people practice what it's like to experience trust before they get married.
Right.
And depending on your experience and depending on, who you've been in position to have to trust, that can be a very healthy and uplifting experience. And it
Yeah.
can also be a very hurtful and damaging experience.
Right.
And just talking to people in general, I feel like that ability to kind of feel safe and comfortable with what you communicate or how you experience being in that person's presence,
Right.
to me is what trust is. And as a believer, there's trust when it comes to people who are natural and physical beings, our
Yes.
relationships with our families, our friends, our coworkers, our, of course, romantic relationships, but
Mhm.
there's also trust with the Heavenly Father. And
Come
it's so
on.
interesting because this topic really came up for me just in reading my devotionals and praying.
Okay.
And I think that a lot of times that relationship with its nuances and its waves and its, changes in season, the trust that you can experience with your Heavenly Father should present as a foundation for a lot of us. We started with natural physical relationships and then progressed to our spiritual relationship with our Heavenly Father. And that trust gets built by experiences that build your faith, build your confidence in how
Yeah.
you experience that individual, or in this case, how you experience God.
Right.
And so for some people, depending on those experiences, it can impact their level of trust,
Yeah.
how comfortable and confident they feel with how they communicate and experience that particular person.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. So in let's talk first about our natural relationships because I love that you mentioned a lot of us have started with our natural relationships,
Yes.
and that's where the trust was either built or broken. in those relationships. And then we'll segue over to our heavenly relationship with our Father.
Right.
Not one before the other in that kind of sense, but
Right.
definitely we want to set a foundation for what most people may be able to
Absolutely.
understand, which is
Yeah.
their natural relationships and
Yeah.
trust. So when it comes to even that trust, how can we repair what may be broken or cultivate what may still be,
Developing.
thriving? Yeah,
Thriving. Yes, yes. Okay. Thriving, developing.
right,
I think that I always look at romantic relationships first as a friendship relationship that
right,
has bonus points in my
right,
opinion.
right.
I think some people do kind of start with the bonus points first, and I can
Mhm.
definitely admit that I've been there before. But to me, I think of that just being an extension of a friendship,
Right,
right? A very genuine relationship. And so when I think about how trust is built, it's through time and experience.
right.
And different relationships have different levels of intimacy or different experiences that build the trust.
Okay.
So clearly, the more time I spend around somebody, I have more of a chance or more of an opportunity to build trust with them because we just have more experience.
Right,
We have
right.
more time together, and that usually involves more investment.
Okay.
And so for me, I think that when you're dealing with trust and you're dealing with experience and you're trying to connect it to intimacy, for one person, intimacy may be very comfortable, a space in which they have a lot of freedom and a lot of comfortability in
Yeah.
sharing and communicating. For others, they don't necessarily feel that way because they have other experiences that don't lend to them being received in the way that they want to. So maybe they shared information with a friend or even a spouse, someone that they're interested in romantically. And the way that that person responded to that information made them feel uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Now they're less inclined to share, they're less inclined to open up. And
Right.
so the responsibility, I think, is wives when we're talking about helping to create a space of building intimacy and trust is being mindful, like we said before, on how we listen. Right?
Mm.
Because if our spouse is someone that is not sharing with a lot of people,
Right,
men usually go to their women first. So they're not sharing with a lot of people their thoughts and feelings.
right.
And you may be hoping that the intimacy that this person's going to share or the trust gets deeper or grows, then being mindful of how you listen to them and how you respond to them when they share is going to make a difference.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because the Bible tells us to be slow to speak but quick to listen,
Mhm.
right? And so when you're hearing something and taking in this information, that taking a pause, taking a break, asking for clarity before you respond,
Yeah.
those simple words that you say it so quickly, you usher it out of your mouth so
Right.
quickly, you just, it's like, let's call it word bombing. You just
Right,
get it in,
right.
get it out. That could be very damaging and hurtful in the same way that we have experienced, most of us women, someone doing that to us.
Right.
Our parental figures, our coworkers, our girlfriends, they respond so quickly that they don't realize that the words that they're saying are creating hurt or harm. They're trying to be honest. They're trying to have your back. They
Right.
love you. You know that they love you, but their words in that moment don't feel loving and don't feel kind.
Right.
It's going to have an impact on how you choose to trust them with the next piece of information. Likely,
Very
you're
true.
going to have more information to share. You're going to have another experience or something else you want to say to them,
Yeah.
and you're going to be second guessing it. Well, you want, as a wife, to present a situation where your husband can share and can present information and him be confident in how you respond.
Right.
And so that means being mindful and remembering how you experience that as well. And I think that when you have a situation where you are in a relationship where trust is very healthy, then you continue to explore other topics that are opening you up, that are giving them access, transparency. You're offering information
Right.
as opposed to just honesty when they're asking, you're telling the truth. That can help to continue to have a thriving, trusting relationship that builds intimacy. I'm offering my thoughts. I'm sharing with you what I'm thinking, not just because you're asking me, but because I trust That
Right.
when I share this with you, you will be a safe and comfortable place for me to be received, for me to be understood, or maybe just empathize with. Our husbands can't relate to everything we
No.
experience, but how they respond can make a difference on if we feel comfortable.
Right.
If you're working on repairing, then I do believe that there's a few things that really help in that process, depending on the depth of how much repair you need, right?
Okay.
I think I like to think about it like this. Depending on how, if we use an example or analogy of someone being sick, right?
Okay.
If a person has a broken leg, or they just got, sliced with a knife, they can't just go to like their normal primary physician for that. They
Right.
got to go to the ER.
Right.
They may need surgery.
Right.
So, but if they are just, I'm having this ache in my shoulder and I want to get it checked out, that might be something where you can just go to the primary care, schedule an appointment, wait a couple weeks, and go into the office to be seen.
Right.
If the trust has been very much damaged by something severe, you
Right.
may need assistance and help. You may need to go to a therapist or a counselor to walk you all through that process together. If it's not as severe, just having disagreements and misunderstandings and maybe miscommunication,
Right.
maybe you could seek out a therapist. Maybe you can seek out a workbook that you all can work through together, or podcasts or videos where you watch
Right.
and then discuss. That creates intimacy, that builds trust, because you're listening to a message at the same time and trying to see how the other person interprets it.
Right.
I don't know about you, but there's been times where I'll watch a video. I already had the privilege of interpreting and taking notes and all the things.
Right.
And then I want to share it with my husband and be like, now what do you think? Right? Well, we've had
They ain't got nothing to say half the time.
What you say? Yeah, they don't have a response. But at the same time, we didn't experience that together. It wasn't this joint kind of like intimate experience. You ever watch the movie with somebody who's already watched the movie?
It's not as good.
It's not the same.
Not the same.
I think about that when I think about the Bible talking about two becoming one.
Yes.
I think that, sitting alongside my spouse in church and us both hearing the message together,
Right.
watching a movie together, experiencing something. A lot of times for a lot of couples, they like the fact that they're experiencing it for the first time together.
Okay.
That can go like way
all
deep,
kinds of ways.
all the things. But
intimacy.
think about it. When you're watching a movie with someone, when you're going to a city with someone and they've already been there, it's not that it's not fun. It just can be a little different of an experience.
Right.
So you can send your spouse. I'm not saying don't send them any message that you thought was great and poignant and meaningful.
Right.
I'm saying if you're working on repairing trust, you may want to sit and watch that video together. I saw the title. It looks interesting. What do you think about checking it out? And then maybe we can check it out while we're at the park, or check it out when we're, at the beach or somewhere that's relaxing. And we get to kind of just discuss. We're not discussing us. Discussing the video.
Yeah.
Right? But it kind of
takes away some of that, tension.
Yeah. And that's the goal. When you're trying to repair trust and build intimacy, tension is not going to make it that much better.
Right.
Doesn't mean that you don't have to address conflicts or disagreements. You absolutely want to address them. You don't want them to become a foothold or a seed. Right. But you want to create a space and an environment, especially as the wife, because we have control over our actions. We can't control them. We don't want to antagonize or irritate the situation that can already be sensitive. Right. I think, to me, games, books, things like that, a friend, actually a mutual friend, gave me a card game it's questions. So when you've been together for almost 16 years, sometimes you think to yourself, I know
everything about them.
Listen, I know everything. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of things. But because they're an evolving person and they're growing just like you are, maybe you don't know their thoughts or their opinions about certain topics because you're preoccupied with the things of life.
Right.
So this game gives a chance of questions of different topics to ask. And there's lots of ones out there. But the one in particular we have, there's a set for romantic relationships. There's a set for friendships. There's all different kinds of sets with questions. I suggest and send that game out to a lot of people because I think that it is an opportunity to take some of the sting out. I don't have to think of a question. You don't got to think of a question. somebody else has thought of it, and we can use this as an opportunity to build trust,
Yes.
to connect, and build intimacy. But again, that's when you're kind of, like you said, you're already thriving and you want to keep it going.
Right.
So different levels, I think, to what your stages or your seasons of building trust,
Right.
and it can require different things. And I think if people can objectively look at where they are in their season and then kind of assess what type of support they need, you're going to run the gamut of all different types, but finding what's best for you and your spouse, thinking about it, praying about it, is one of the best ways, I think, to work towards trust and building intimacy.
Absolutely. Do you feel like some of our core relationships, core meaning like our parent, family, the household that we came from prior to engaging in marriage, those relationships have a big impact on the way that we trust when we now engage in marriage with our spouse?
Absolutely. That, and then the actual relationship with the spouse, right?
Right.
So how you come into the situation,
Right.
how you come into the relationship, I think has a lot to do with what we experienced prior to being in that relationship.
Right.
And your parents and that home life, that family life, that upbringing, how trust looked with them, what they modeled for you, what you experienced. Were you able to trust them with what you were thinking and feeling, or were you kind of brushed off and dismissed? Was it a household where not being transparent or not being open or honest, but being more so creating a veil or creating a false representation of yourself just to kind of make it look good? Well, trust and intimacy may be more challenging for you because you weren't in an environment where that was welcomed.
Right.
Or was it only welcome when, the family members wanted to hear what they wanted to hear? So you learn to navigate to only be open and transparent or honest when you were going to receive the response that they wanted to actually give.
Right.
Do you feel like friendships have not had a place and space where you can be trusting, where you can offer up your true self, your true authentic self, and it be received? Or have you witnessed friendships kind of shift and navigate as we as individual women shift and navigate and grow? Life experiences and things like that can impact how we trust. And for some people, they can be too trusting. Right. Just everybody and anybody they're open to. That can create damage. With some people, they don't trust anyone. So when it's not rooted in a healthy place, whether you're just overly trusting because you didn't receive that, or you don't have those types of boundaries, or you're so restrictive where you can't trust anyone, I think that that's always a place and space where we're looking at, where do I need healing? Where do I need to allow God and the Holy Spirit to really help me uproot anything that I could be doing or could have happened to me that could be contributing to this behavior? Absolutely. I think we're meant to do life in a community with other women, but it's really, really unfortunate because a lot of women have been hurt, don't feel trusting, haven't been able to have the intimacy with other females because of behavior that the Bible tells us not to display, right? We're talking about the spirit. What do you say?
Feeling judged and
feeling judged. And a lot of times it's coming from love, but how it comes out, right? It's a totally different thing. So you're understanding personality. And so it's our responsibility to know our friends and to get to know them, to know our spouse, and to know what things could be triggering, what things could be hurtful. It doesn't mean you don't tell them the truth. Right. But the Bible even tells fathers not to, provoke their children. So it shouldn't be okay for us to provoke our friends or our significant other. So with that being the case, I do think that those relationships create a mindset or expectation or a way of being when we enter in a romantic relationship and we enter in with our spouse. And so you have two individuals from two different backgrounds with two different experiences on trust coming together and now trying to build their own foundation. And that can be shaky or rocky. Then add to that the actual experience in the relationship, what I do as a wife, what he does as a husband, and whether or not that adds to our foundation or tears it back down, or adds and tears it back down. And because we're imperfect people striving towards perfection, you're going to have some ups and some downs. And sometimes those downs dip so low again, you can't just go see the regular physician, your
Right.
primary care doctor. You got to go to the ER. You need
Some
surgery.
extensive help. Right.
You need some extensive help. Other times we fell down and we need to watch some videos or read a book
Right.
or get away or do a staycation or be physically intimate. There's all these types of things to rebuild that intimacy and that trust. But I think that our foundation outside of our relationship sets the experience.
Right.
And then when we come together, we have those experiences, whether one of us is not telling the truth, whether one of us is hiding something, whether one of us is not honoring our word, one of us is not honoring our vows. Those things happen and it impacts how you trust that person. So
Right.
you got your background, your foundation, right?
Mhm.
Plus the experience. For some people, it's a recipe for disaster. For others, it's a good starting point and then they can navigate.
Right.
I think that that's why we're meant to do life in a community with other people.
Absolutely.
Like I said, that marriage retreat, I got to hear other people talk about what they experienced because sometimes our parents are not transparent. Sometimes they're not open and honest. We don't know what they experience,
Ooh.
right? So
Yeah.
we're sitting back watching, but we don't know the ins and outs. And
Right. We don't know the
maybe
answer.
to a certain extent, for some people, they shouldn't share. They share too much. They already overshared. And it's impacted how we see men, how we see women, and how we experience. Now we don't trust them because our parents created a situation where they gave too much information and now we're not trusting.
Right.
So many dynamics. So sometimes it's a good thing our parents ain't share because it prevents us even more.
Right.
And other times it's good to just hear from other people and just glean from a community of older couples and couples your age, younger couples, and just different things that kind of help to create information that you can utilize when you're experiencing these things with your husband.
I heard a lady say something that really stuck with me because I am a very big advocate for being an example to my children and sharing things with my children and making sure that they don't have to search the world for information that I could have given them
That makes
or
sense.
experience, you know what I mean? Things that I could have shared with them so that they can be equipped before they leave here.
Absolutely.
And with being an advocate of that, sometimes there's a twofold. Everything needs balance, obviously. But I heard this woman say when she was sharing with her daughter, there are a lot of things that I want to share with you and that I think that you should know. But some things have to stay between husband and wife. And I thought that that was so awesomely said. I thought it was so awesomely said because, yeah, we do want to, we don't want to have that kind of distrust with our kids because they don't know what's going on with us and some of those things. But then there is a level of hidden or private and intimate that they can't come across that veil. They can't come across that line. The boundary. That's what
boundary. A healthy boundary.
Right.
Yeah.
But I just like how she explained it because, like I said, I'm one of those people who really want to make sure I equip my kids and have them ready for all the things of life. But to an extent, it's necessary.
I agree, and I think that with that being the case, you can talk to your children about behaviors,
right,
as opposed to specific details,
right.
And the kids are going to. So this is where that to me really is poignant about being that model.
Right.
They're going to begin to try to correlate the behaviors that you're mentioning to what they're seeing.
Right.
Right. So they're going to start to try to make a match. When you say a man should be respectful, they're going to be looking for evidence of a man being respectful. So being mindful, not having to give specific details, because I think especially when you're dealing with children and their parents, they're not going to ever marry that person specifically. So you don't have to give them details about that person, but behaviors, characteristics, ways of being and how to conduct yourself, so that they're not looking for a specific person. They're looking for behaviors that should be in alignment with the behaviors that God calls us to have. That way that standard is intact. And then if not, they know what it looks like for someone to be growing towards that, or maturing in that area.
Right.
Even as parents, just because that's God's standard doesn't mean we've yet acquired it. So we're
Right.
still working towards it. And they don't have to be pinpointing, well, my mama told me that my daddy is not responsible. Like,
Right.
no, it's good for everybody, women and men, to be responsible. That's a God expectation, a God
Right.
standard, to be responsible, to have dominion, to do those different things.
Right.
What does that look like? How does that show up? And how can people grow in that?
Yes.
So yeah, don't give them all your business.
Nah. And I think that helped me to keep the balance, because obviously it was things I didn't want to say, but then I don't want to feel like I'm not also equipping.
There we go. Yes.
That definitely was like,
and they can carry that into their future too. Like,
absolutely. Yeah. Teach your children, but you ain't got to be specific. Just
you got to give them all the details.
Right.
That's
So,
your girl. I'm just kidding.
Absolutely.